Welcome teachers to our last Shikshana Sambrama session for this year. It started with 2022 September and we're almost in the month of February 2023 and we've almost reached our last session, which is a wonderful thing to have you all here with us continuously through these sessions. Ella teachers go caring with color samsteyinda we give you a hearty welcome. So ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತ ಹಾಗೆ ಈ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ಸಂಭ್ರಮ ಬಂದು ಜಿಲ್ಲಾ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ಮತ್ತು ತರಬೇತಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ರಾಮನಗರ ಹಾಗೂ ಕ್ಯಾರಿಂಗ್ ವಿತ್ ಕಲರ್ ಸಹಯೋಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಏರ್ಪಡಿಸಲಾಗಿದ್ದ ಒಂದು ಟೀಚರ್ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಹಲವಾರು ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಈ ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ ಸಂಭ್ರಮದ ಮೂಲಕ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿದೀವಿ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಎರಡು ಮೇನ್ ಥೀಮ್ಸ್ ಏನಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಇನ್ ಅ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮ್ ಕಾನ್ವರ್ಸೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ನೋಡಿದೀವಿ. ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಮ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಥೀಮ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮ್ ಕಾನ್ವರ್ಸೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆ ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲಿನ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಭಾಗ 2 ನೋಡಿ ಈ ಫುಲ್ ಕೋರ್ಸ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ಒಂದು ಎಂಡ್ ಮುಕ್ತಾಯ ನಾವು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೇವೆ. So without further ado and taking any more time, let's quickly refresh our memory on what our goal is for this upcoming module and what we wish to achieve.
Thank you, Ms. Park. Good afternoon, dear teachers. We are really overjoyed to be taking you through the last session of this academic year. And we are hoping that as we conduct this session, we want to hear from you. Sessionally, tumba activities ಇದೆ, English speaking activities ಇದೆ, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು participate ಮಾಡಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ speaking skills ಅನ್ನು improve ಮಾಡಿ. So let's look at briefly and quickly, let's look at what are the goals and objectives of this module. ಈ ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ದು ಏನೆಲ್ಲ ಗುರಿಗಳು ಮತ್ತೆ ಉದ್ದೇಶಗಳು ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಈ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡೋಣ. So our goal in this module is to create an English environment for learners using Kalika Kshetrake outcomes. We want to practice speaking English during the Sanchalana English session. Now, in this session, there are a lot of activities that are designed to help you speak during the session. So activities use ಮಾಡಿ ನೀವು ನಿಮ್ಮ speaking skills ಅನ್ನು improve ಮಾಡಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ overall speaking skills, English speaking skills improve ಆಗ್ಬೇಕಂತ ನಮ್ಮ ಗೋಲ್ ಇದೆ ಈ ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲ್ದು. What are our objectives? It is to understand classroom conversations as a tool for encouraging speaking of English inside the classroom. ಈ ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲ್ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ classroom conversations ಅಂತ. Classroom conversations use ಮಾಡಿ we want to encourage you to develop an English speaking environment in your classroom. And finally, practice asking questions and receiving responses in a way that is positive, directing towards the right answer. So what do we mean by that? Adanu let's see as we go. Module nodi hogana. So what are the milestones and learning outcomes we have in this module? So in this module, we have covered certain or we have looked at certain milestones and learning outcomes. And there are particular topics we have picked from the milestones and learning outcomes of the upcoming month that we have dealt using the topic of classroom conversations. So what are the learning outcomes and milestones for the upcoming month? So for grade 4 and 5, we have milestone 14 and milestone 15, that is describing objects, toys orally and in written form, identifying toys and familiar objects, writing a message to our favorite toy. Milestone 15 is identifying the things in the environment writing simple sentences about the things related to the environment, knowing the importance of environment, and creating a poster to save it. When it comes to grade 6, we have learning outcome 6.10. That is, students appreciate either verbally or in writing the variety in food, dress, customs, and festivals. Milestone 7, grade 7, learning outcome 7.11, uses appropriate grammatical forms in communication. For example, noun, pronoun, verb, determiners, time and tense, and so on. So this is what you can expect as a teacher to receive from this module. E module ನಮಗೆ ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಗೆ ಯೂಸ್ಫುಲ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ನೋಡೋಣ. Okay, so this module will help us understand what to do after receiving answers. ನೀವು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದನ್ನ ಈ ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕಲಿಯೋಣ. This will also help us ask follow-up questions. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಮಕ್ಕಳನ್ನು ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸಿ ಯಾವ ತರದ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕೇಳಬಹುದು. ಈ ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲವು ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟೀಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟೀಸ್ ಮಾಡೋಣ. And then finally, this module will help us practice English, which means in this module, there are a lot of activities that will help us practice our English speaking skills. Now, this module or the content in this module is not grade dependent or topic dependent, which means teachers that whatever we learn in this module, whatever the principles that we are going to learn about classroom conversations, you can use that across any grade, whether you are a first grade teacher or you are a sixth grade teacher or you are a fourth grade teacher, doesn't matter. You can use it across any grade and you can use it across any topic that you are teaching in the classroom. This module is simply about the principles that we use to have an effective conversation in the classroom. What this module will help us do is build language skills, practice speaking, and in this module particularly, we will look at some grammar concepts that we can teach experientially. So let's do a quick recap of the previous module. What did we learn in Classroom Conversations Part 1? So in Classroom Conversations Part 1, we understood that to have a conversation in the classroom, the teacher must first ask a question and the student gives an answer, and that's how the conversation happens. However, what actually ends up happening is teacher will ask a question, but the students might give different types of answers. Some of them may be wrong answers, some of them may be partially right, some of them may be completely incorrect, some of them might not even answer. And this is different from the expected answer that the teacher has in her mind. So then what does the teacher do? The teacher has to use additional questions or follow-up questions to help the child understand what she's asking and arrive at the expected answer in her mind. What we learned last time was there is a series of steps that we can follow. It starts with composing the right question. So we use a correct question starter, come up with the correct question to ask children. Once we come up with a question, the next step is we receive the responses. Now, when we receive responses, there are many types of responses that we receive, just like we have discussed. Now, how do we categorize if those responses are correct or partially correct or incorrect? We compare it to an expected answer that we have in our mind. So teachers, just a small reminder, in the previous module, we had discussed that when you ask a question, you create an expected answer. That is, as a teacher, what is the answer you are expecting from the student? So you have created that answer in your mind, and that is called the expected answer. According to the expected answer and the keywords you want the children to use in their answer, you can decide if the answer is correct, if it's partially correct, and so on. Now, in the last module, we had what to do when we receive a correct answer and a partially correct answer. So we discussed that when we receive a correct answer, we will see and we will appreciate the positive. We also discussed that when we partially correct answer, partially correct answer, that the child has used one or two keywords, but has not given you the full information that you are expecting in your expected answer. So what do you do then? You also positively acknowledge the child for the correct part of their answer. And then we spoke about a technique called probing, whereas you can guide the child to understand what they have missed out and arrive at the expected answer in your mind. So teachers, please requesting you, if you need to revise these concepts, or if there are some things that you're not able to understand from the recap, please do visit our YouTube channel where all of these videos are uploaded, and look at Classroom Conversation Part 1 to clarify your doubts. Now, in this module, we are going to look at what we will do when we get no answer. So when we ask a question in class and the children have not answered us, what can we do? And then we are also going to look at what we can do when we get an incorrect answer. So what are the different things that we can use, or the strategies we can use when we get an incorrect answer? So that was our recap. Let's start with the first type of answer that we're dealing with in this module, that is no answer. So teachers, very quickly, if any of you would like to respond, you have asked a question in the class, the child has not responded. Can any of you just quickly type in your chat box and tell me what you will do? Any responses on what we can do when we don't receive an answer? Or what are some of the things that you as teachers will do when you don't receive an answer in the classroom? Asking the question once again, excellent. Yes, sir. You will ask the child, what are you doing? You will use pictures. Yes, excellent answers. So there are different strategies that we can employ. But now there are certain steps that we can follow in a particular order that can help us actually get a child who is not responding to respond to you, or to think about the answer that you want them to give. So what are those steps? Let's quickly look at that. And teachers, thank you for your responses. Please do keep them coming. We want this session to be as interactive as possible. Please do reply to us whenever you feel. Please do respond to us on the chat box. We love hearing your responses. Thank you once again for all your responses. Yes, so receiving answers, when we get no answer, what do we do? 4 simple steps. One is you repeat the question. Next is you rephrase. Third is you ask related questions. And fourth is you provide hint or provide a hint. So let's look at what the first step means, repeating a question. This simply means we have to make the question clear. We have to make sure our learners have heard our question correctly. And we need to stress on important keywords in our question. So let's look at this with an example from Learning Outcome 7.11. So the Learning Outcome 7.11 says, uses appropriate grammatical forms in communication. For example, noun, pronoun, verb, determiners, time, and so on. So now if this is the LO, the teacher or you can probably ask children a question like this. Can you identify nouns in this picture? So there is a picture on the left side of your screen, and it is available in your Kalika Kshetra Ki textbook. you have shown the children this picture and you have asked the child, or you have asked the children in your class, can you identify nouns in this picture? So once again, you have an expected answer in your mind. So what is the expected answer? Boy, tree, balloons, fruit, etc., etc. Since this is not a framed answer, all of the words that the children you would want the children to use are keywords. So now you've asked a question, the child has not given you any response, or the class has not given you any response. So you will repeat the question. Can you identify the nouns in this picture? So when you repeat the question, you're making sure that the child has heard you clearly. So one thing that you can do to make sure the child has heard you very clearly is emphasize on the keywords that are in the question. So in this question, the keywords are identifying nouns. So when you repeat the question, stress on the keywords. Like, can you identify nouns in this picture? Now you have repeated the question. What is the next thing that you can do? You can rephrase or simplify the question. So this is because sometimes children might not understand some words that you have used in the question. It might seem a little complex for them, for some children probably in your class. So now, how do you continue to have a conversation in English while simplifying the question for them? So let's take the same question. Can you identify nouns in this picture? I have not received any answer. So what I will do, or what the teacher will do, is break down certain complicated words in the question into simpler words. For example, in this question, the word noun could be complex, or maybe the child does not know what a noun is. So what can I do? I will actually try to make the word noun, break it down into a simpler word or more identifiable, more relatable words for them. And I will say, can you tell me the names of any person or object that you see in the picture? So teachers, please note, one thing that you can do while simplifying questions is look up simple explanations for certain words on the internet in English, and that will give you simpler words that you can use while talking to the children or while asking children questions. And if they are not able to understand it, you can use the simpler English words for these words. So you have rephrased the question and you have asked the child, can you tell me the names of any person or object that you see in the picture? So now the child is still not answering. The next thing that you will do is ask related questions. So how do we ask related questions? We identify related concepts. We talk about related things, give the children clues, and then we ask about the main concept. So let me see how I can do that for this question. Can you identify nouns in this picture? Still no answer. Teachers, please keep in mind that this is after you have repeated, you have rephrased the question. The child has still not answered, or the students are still unable to answer. So now what you can do is, you can ask about related objects or related concepts. So here my main concept is noun. So let me ask about things that the child might like or children might like, or the things that children might see around them. So this will help them to talk about nouns in some sense. So my question can be, can you tell me a few things you like in this picture? Do you see anything in the picture that you see around you? If yes, what is it? I'm sorry. I think I moved too quickly from that slide. Yeah. So do you see anything in this picture that you see around you? If yes, what is it? Right? So these are ways in which we can ask students related questions that can help them think of the answer that we have in our mind. Now, finally, let's say the child has not answered your question as yet. What we can do is provide a hint, that is, provide an example, or we can provide an analogy. So what does that mean? So same question once again. Can you identify nouns in this picture? You can give the child or ask the child question while including some hints that helps them answer the question. So for example, can you tell me the name of a flying object in this picture? Can you tell me the name of things we can eat from the picture? So you see the way the question is crafted. It is using a hint, or it's including a hint within the question so that the child is able to understand what the teacher wants. So these are 4 steps that we can use to um, help children understand our question and get them to answer the question. Now, let's do a quick activity, dear teachers. We would like you to use your chat boxes to respond to us during this activity. Here you have another question. Can you identify the verbs in this picture? The expected answer is standing, flying, playing, etc. So please do imagine that you have asked this question in the classroom. The children are not giving you an answer. Let's just try the first step of responding to no answers. That is, rephrase and simplify.
So now we will look into the last but not the least kind of category of answers that we generally receive from our students or learners, which is an incorrect answer. So before we see how we can manage an incorrect answer, we'd like to hear from all of y'all. So what would you do, teachers, if you are in the classroom and you ask a question to your class, to the students, and you receive a wrong answer? What would you do? Please do send us the strategies that you might use in your classroom via chat to us. And manage an incorrect answer. But before we do so and discuss in today's module, we would like to try and define what an incorrect answer is. So we have specific characteristics under partially correct answers or correct answers or even no answer for that category. So the characteristic of an incorrect answer, it has to be very clear in our minds, especially because we are teaching a language and not just a subject. So our answers, that the answers that is coming our way, can either be contextually wrong or it can be language based and so on. So how do we define an incorrect answer? We've all seen that when we frame a question, we have expected answers in our mind as teachers. And when the answer received from the student does not match with any of the keywords in the expected answer, which means that the answer must be devoid of even one single keyword from the expected answer, such a response from any student or the class would be categorized as an incorrect answer. And also, answers that are not directly addressing the expected topic at hand can also be categorized as incorrect, meaning that the statement might be true, but it's somehow not very relevant to the class, and that is why it becomes incorrect. So that is also a category of incorrect answer, which we will be seeing today. So what are the strategies that we can use as teachers to make correct answers? Here is a simple method that we would like to introduce, which we're sure you all have been using in your classrooms. We would just like to concretize the idea. So for incorrect answers, we generally tend to redirect. Redirect is a method like probing that we had learned in our previous module, which we would generally use for partially correct answers, and which is found to be useful in helping the children understand and reach the expected answer that you want them to learn. So how do we do that? How do we redirect the learner's mind and thought process? let's try and look that through an example. So we all know that the milestone for the month February has milestone 15, which has an activity called pick and speak on any of the given topics, meaning sun, moon, river, star, flower, etc. So taking examples from this milestone, let's try and understand how we can use redirection as a method to deal with incorrect answers. So redirecting has 3 steps to it. 3 steps, meaning that they happen one after the other or simultaneously, but we'd like to address each of those steps separately for today's module. So the first step is to acknowledge the correct part. Yes, we know that it might sound a little silly that we have to acknowledge a correct part in an incorrect answer, but we will see how we can do that through a few examples. And the second step is to point out the incorrect part. Remember, teachers, that to pointing out the incorrect part is always secondary to what acknowledging the correct part is. So it's always important to first encourage on a positive note and then point out the mistake. And then finally, ask or re-ask question with clues, which you all have been suggesting right from the beginning. So let's try and see what these 3 steps of redirecting are. So the first step is to give out appreciative words or statements, because we know that any given answer must be first positively acknowledged. So yes, the answer coming our way is incorrect and there is nothing to appreciate about. We are not going to say, yes, that is correct, but we are going to appreciate the effort that the student is putting into answering. Because we did see that there is a possibility that sometimes students can not answer at all. So the fact that they're answering itself deserves appreciation. So we will give out comments like, good attempt, nice try, good, I like the way you think. So all of these encourages the learners to think better and on their own and keep trying despite being wrong. So that brings us to the first step of acknowledging the correct part. What do we mean by acknowledge the correct part? In the statement or the response that the student is giving us, there might be some part or some parts that are correct, as in they are true. So let's try and acknowledge that, identify that, and appreciate the effort. All 3 must be done, as in only when you've listened to that answer carefully, you will be able to identify the correct part. And then you have to verbally tell it out loud and say, yes, I see that you've told this word and good that you've tried telling that. And I appreciate that. So let's try and do that with an example here. Here is a small video clip for all of y'all that we will be playing. But before that, we'd like you all to think in terms of this particular example. So if the question that we ask the students is something like this, based on milestone 15, we ask them to talk about the moon. The expected answer in our minds as teachers would be, moon is a natural satellite of Earth. Moon has different phases and hence we can see different portions of it every night. But is this the answer that we're getting from the learners? No. We are getting very different and unrelated responses, like moon is another planet beside Earth. Moon melts every night. So are these correct? No. Both these statements are wrong. So what do? Do we just say it on their face, telling you're wrong, and just move on to the next learner? No, we want each of our learners to learn the correct answers, and in order for them to learn it individually, it's important that you address their incorrect answers as well. So how can we do that? Here's a small sentence framework for all of you all that might come handy for you in the classroom. So you can always start off by responding, good attempt. Dash is dash. You are right about that. Why do we say you are right about that? we are trying to acknowledge the correct part of the answer that the learner is giving. So let's see how we can do that for this particular answer that's displayed. How do we acknowledge the correct part in these two answers? We could say something like this. Good attempt. Moon is beside or very close to the earth. You are right about that. See how the answer says that moon is another planet beside the earth. The student has got the planet part wrong, but he is right that is something that is beside or very near to the earth. So we're going to try and acknowledge that correct part. So the students get a little encouraged saying, okay, I have said something right. And the teacher is pointing out to that in front of the entire class. So that is the note on which we want to try and deal with incorrect answers. So here's the video as we had spoken about earlier to show you how we can actually try and manage incorrect answers. Teachers, we all want you to pay very close attention to the video that will be played now. Pay close attention to the question asked and the kind of answer that the students are giving. And then the activity will be based on how you will manage that answer or respond to that answer.
How many planets are there? 9 planets? Yes. Okay.
So the question here that is being asked by the teacher is, how many planets are there in our solar system? The answer that this...
How many planets are there? 9.
It was 9. So we expected the answer 8 planets, but the answer that we received was 9 planets. So teachers, we request you all to take 2 minutes of time, use the sentence framework that is displayed on the screen, and come up with a positive response that you can give to these students that you just saw on the screen. ಟೀಚರ್ಸ್ ಇವಾಗ ನೀವು ನೋಡಿರೋ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಳಿರೋ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಕೊಡುವ ಉತ್ತರ ಬಂದು ತಪ್ಪಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತು. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅದು ನಮ್ಮ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟೆಡ್ ಆನ್ಸರ್ಗೆ ಮ್ಯಾಚ್ ಆಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಉತ್ತರಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಹೆಂಗೆ ರೆಸ್ಪಾಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ಹೆಂಗೆ ಆ ಮಕ್ಳು ಹೇಳ್ತಿರೋ ಉತ್ತರದಲ್ಲಿ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿರೋ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾವು ತೋರಿಸಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಎಂಕರೇಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದನ್ನ ಈ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಸ್ಪ್ಲೇ ಆಗಿರೋ ಫ್ರೇಮ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಅನ್ನ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಚಾಟ್ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ತಿಳಿಸಿ. So now let's move on to the next step of dealing with incorrect answers, which is to point out the incorrect part. Notice how this step is secondary to the first step. We are not immediately telling the students, no, you're wrong. What you're saying is absolutely wrong, and this is what is wrong. No, we're trying to keep that as a secondary step and not keep that as the first step of response. But it is equally important to point out to the incorrect part, because as much as we want to encourage the students to give the right answers and to try at answering, we want them to realize what mistake they're doing. So that is another positive thing that we need to do with our learners. How do we do that? We generally do that by first very keenly identifying the incorrect part, which might be more than one, so parts sometimes, and also try and identify if there are any misconceptions. So what do we mean by misconception? The incorrect part might not just be in the sentence, but in the understanding of the students itself. So it's not just because students don't remember that there are 8 planets now, they still think that it is true that there are still 9 planets. So how do you try and address that misconception is what we will learn in the second step. So again, taking the same example from our milestone 15 about the question, talk about the moon, the expected answer remains the same. The incorrect answers also might be a little different every time we ask them. So here is an additional kind of incorrect answer, which is white in color, which is true, but it is not the answer that we're expecting. So what do? We could always use sentence frameworks or question frameworks like this, which says, but why did you say dash? Do you think dash? So what are we trying to do with asking these kind of questions? We're trying to make the learners realize the mistake that they have done by themselves through reflection, of course. So how can we frame a question to point out the incorrect part for this particular example? It could be something like this. But why did you say that the moon is a planet? Do you think that the moon is a planet? See how these questions are trying to make the children think about the incorrect part that they have just told out loud to the teacher. So here's the next activity for today, which is again the same video, yes, but what we want you to do here is something different from what you did last time. Last time, you acknowledged the correct part using the sentence framework. Now we want you to listen to the video again and address the misconception or point out to the incorrect part. So let's quickly hear what the students' answers are.
How many planets are there? 9 planets? Yes. Okay.
So here we go, teachers. Here's another 2 minutes of time for you all. It's the same question, same wrong answer, same expected answer, but the approach or the step in which we are addressing or dealing with this kind of answer is different. So we request you to use both the question frameworks and the sentence frameworks that is displayed on the screen for you, and give us sentences and questions through which we can point out the incorrect part and help the children reflect on their mistake. So now coming to the last step of how to redirect the students towards the correct answer when they give us an incorrect answer. The last step is to re-ask question with clues. This is something that you all have been suggesting right from the beginning, and we completely agree as to how this is a wonderful strategy to redirect the students. But we've purposely kept this as a third step. Why? Because first we want to strategically address the students' effort, acknowledge it, point out to the incorrect part in their answers, and then go ahead and ask, re-ask questions. So how do we do that? For the example that we have at hand, which is talk about the moon. Yes, we have our handy expected answer. We've been getting a few incorrect answers, which are partially true, but completely incorrect given the context. How do we address them? How do we try and manage them by re-asking the question with clues? Here are a few question frameworks for you. So we could use frameworks like, do you know dash? What is the shape of dash? So the teacher's response using these question frameworks could be something like this. Did you look at the moon yesterday? What was the shape of the moon? Don't you think the moon looks different every night? So asking these questions with clues, hinting at how what they are saying might not match with what they have already seen and witnessed, is a way of addressing the student's response. So now we would like to proceed ahead and try and summarize what we've learned for today. And for the lack of having more time, we will try and skip an activity. But yes, here's the same video that you all are quite familiar with now. Think about it at your homes and in your minds for now as to how you can re-ask the same question that the teacher asked in this video, and how you would give it along with clues to the students after their particular.
So teachers, very quickly. We have learned 4 types of answers. That is, when we ask questions, we receive 4 types of answers. Every stage, whichever answer we get, we will positively acknowledge. We really love some of the responses that we've gotten on chat. Thank you, teachers, for participating and thinking through and understanding the principles of classroom conversation. After we positively acknowledge, there are different types of strategies that we can use, which is appreciating, repeating, simplifying, or probing and redirecting. Now, once you have received the responses, acknowledge their responses, use the different strategies to help learners arrive or understand the question you're asking and arrive at the expected answer, what do you do? There's a step called modifying the answer. So what do we do when it comes to modifying the answer? We reiterate correct keywords from any of the responses that we've received from the students, and we introduce correct keywords that the students have missed out. So let's take the same question, talk about the moon. In this, the different keywords here are national satellite, different phases, see different portions, and so on. Now, the children might have used some keywords, such as if a child has given you a correct answer or a partially correct answer, they might have used some keywords that you can pick up and write on the board. For example, some of the children might have said the moon is beside the earth, or that the moon is not a planet, so on and so forth. So this can come up in your classroom conversations, and it is important to pick up what the students say in correct or the words that the students have used in English, and if it is right, write it on the board so that the students also understand that whatever they're speaking somewhere is correct, and they also find it reassuring to speak to you in English. Once that is done, you introduce certain keywords that the students haven't used. For example, on the board here, we see satellite. So the students might not have used the word satellite. Write the keywords that they have missed from the expected answer on the board. Once that is over, you can now introduce the expected answer. So what do we mean by introduce? You first write down the expected answer on the board. Once the expected answer is written on the board, you re-ask the question. That is, what did you ask the students at the beginning of the class? You asked them, talk about the moon. And now, after you have said this, introduce your expected answer as a response to the question. So you've written down the question answer on the board. You have said, okay, children, in the beginning of the class, I asked you to talk about the moon. When we talk about the moon, we can say this. Moon is the natural satellite of the Earth. Moon has different phases. We can see different portions of it every night. It looks white in color to us. So this is how you can have a conversation when you ask a question in the classroom. And this is how you can end the conversation by finally introducing the expected answer and helping children understand what the response is to the question that you have asked.
So now, having seen how we can have an effective classroom conversation through its various steps and strategies, there is probably one thing that is lurking at the back of all of your minds, which is how do we deal with bilingual answers from the learners? Because we just initially saw while explaining the definition of incorrect answers that since it's a language class, the answers might not only be contextually wrong, but sometimes based on the language, it might be considered not very correct or wrong. So what do we do? How do we categorize bilingual answers? How do we manage bilingual answers is something that we need to see. So just with the example that we have at hand, which is talk about the moon, students might generally give us answers like this. Night ali matra kanutte. Moon on the planet. Mele in sky. So how do we deal with these answers? How do we categorize these answers? Are these answers correct? Contextually, yes. based on the language? No. So how do we categorize them? Are they correct? Are they completely incorrect? No. They fall into the category which is partially correct. And that is exactly how we will address and manage these bilingual answers. We have seen in our previous module as to how we can manage partially correct answers, which is definitely at first positively acknowledge them by saying, yes, you are all right about the moon. All the facts that you're giving me about the moon is right. But then you also probe them. How do you probe them? You give them clarity. So you give them clarity as to saying that, see, I've been asking you to talk about the moon, but I want you to talk about it in English. So are you finding it difficult somewhere to take out all the words in English? Tell me, what are those words? Okay, do you want a word for mele? Okay, it's up in the sky. Is moon on the planet? Okay, do you want a word for Ondu? It is one. So try and make them reflect on the help that they need in order for them to get the English words, and also help them realize that moon is not a planet. It is just a satellite that is beside the Earth. So just as how you would deal with partially correct answers by probing them towards the expected answer, bilingual answers also can be dealt in a similar fashion. So now that brings us to the summary of what we've been doing so far with incorrect answers, which is acknowledge, redirect, modify, and introduce the expected answer. But it also brings us to the summary and end of both our classroom conversation modules. So in part 1, we extensively learned about how to ask a question, receive responses, which is categorized responses based on how correct or incorrect they are. And we also learned to give positive feedback. But in today's session, which is Classroom Conversations Part 2, we again saw how to give positive feedback, modify the answer, and introduce the expected answer. So this theme of having classroom conversations is a very common thing in our day-to-day lives as teachers. But the reason we've been seeing this strategically with steps and with methods is so that we very consciously put an effort to do all of this in our classrooms and to have them in English, which is our main goal. So that brings us to the end of the theme that we have planned for today. But before we sum up and end today's module, we'd like to address the request that we've been getting from all of you, that is to add some grammar element to our module. So here are a few ideas to teach grammar experientially. We're not going to do the activity with you since we do not have a lot of time at hand, but we'd just like to throw a few ideas your way, which you can definitely use in your classrooms to teach grammar. So there are milestones and learning outcomes mapped out for each month. And we know that milestone 14 and learning outcome 11 has been mapped out for the month of February. So these two milestones, the milestone here addresses on talking about or describing a toy. And learning outcome 11 talks about how we can introduce concepts like nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. So a simple activity that you can all do in the classroom is the blindfold activity. So you can ask 2 students to volunteer, have both of them blindfolded, give a toy to one of the student and ask them to feel the toy that they have in their hand. And they have to explain or describe the toy in such a way that the person, friend in front of them, who is almost blind as they are, is able to identify what they have in hand with just the descriptions. Meaning that, the student might say it has a fat nose, it has long ears, it has a smooth skin, it's a little too small, it's fluffy. So all of these words the students might not get at first. They might struggle to get it in English, or they might get it in their regional language, but they are quite motivated to tell their friend what they have in hand And since all the eyes of the class are on them and you're expecting them to describe what they have in hand, they have a good motivation of turning to you and saying, ma'am, what do you say for smooth? What do you say for long ears? And so in a small, quick activity, students will learn a bunch of words from you. And by the end of the class, you can tell them happily that students, you've learned a bunch of nouns, a bunch of adjectives today, and you can go home happily knowing that you've increased your vocabulary. So that's an activity that you can definitely do based on the grades. And another activity that is based on milestone 15 and again learning outcome 11 is again to describe a place and to have the others identify what place it is. So what we all like or what we all connect to is our memories in life of our favorite places. And when we talk about an experience that we really liked, we want to put it in the best way possible, express it in the best way possible so the audience learns and how you felt. So ask the learners to pick a place, pick a favorite memory, and talk about their experience of that place without naming the place. And having not named the place, the others have no clue what place it is. Is it a beach? Is it a restaurant? Is it a swimming pool? They have no clue. The students are just asked to describe that place, that it had water, that it had sand, that it had trees, that it had shops. So the students might get a lot of words out of their imagination. And so being highly motivated to share their personal experience, the students would have gone home with a better speaking skill, with a better comprehension from what others say, and learning a lot of new words, because they would have definitely asked you, ma'am, what do you say for this, or what do you say for that, because I know only this in Kannada. So these are two quick activities that we can do in the classroom that comes very handy to us. And by the end of the day, we get to say that we've actually taught them grammar concepts like nouns or verbs or adverbs or adjectives, and just shown them and given them words. So that brings us to the end of the module for today. But before we end today's module, we'd like you to take you through our app, our official app, Teachopia, and show you how we can navigate through the app to get good resources.
Just very quickly, if you haven't downloaded the Teachopia app, please do download it on your phone. There is lots of content available for you to use in your classrooms as you are teaching different chapters and lessons from your textbooks and handbooks. So when you download the app to teach content from the Kalika Kshetra, we have prepared certain scripts. So let me just take you through very quickly how you can access those scripts. On your Teachopia app, when you open the app, this is the page that you will see. Please click on the content button. Once you click on the content button, you will find two tabs, circular content and other content. Tap on other content first. Then tap on the grade that you are teaching or the book that you are teaching according to the month. So we have, according to the month, the different books used for the Kalika Kshetra curriculum, as well as categorize it grade-wise. So pick the particular grade that you want from the particular month that you want. Once you do that, choose the subject that you want to access. So here, let's say you want to access English. You can tap the milestone activity tab that you see, and then pick the pick the particular milestone that you want to teach in the classroom. Once you touch that, what you will see is a script like this, where we will have the learning outcome outline and keywords. And then what we have done is, we have given you the English dialogues and instructions that you need to use in the classroom. So what do we mean when we say that? The bullet points here are instructions for you as a teacher as to what you can do. And below the instructions, what you see next to the dashes are dialogues that you can use. So for example, if the instruction is greet the learners, we have different dialogues on how you can open the classroom or you can start off the classroom by meeting the learners and helping them open their textbooks in English. So the dialogues are like, you can open page 80 in your workbook, look at the picture or presentation card from your workbook. What are the things that you see? So here, this is how you will find your dialogue as well as instructions that you can use in each class. Once again, teachers, thank you very much for joining our